This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
You know, Greg Fasula's not here today.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, because we need a liberal to pick on, and I saw Greg yesterday.
I'd like to just show him the error of his ways.
Well, we have our guest attorney here that's tried to show him the error of his ways, and he doesn't pay any more attention to you than he does to me, Alan.
That's true.
Back in '04.
That's been a while.
Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, big word, independent. Greg Fasula, attorney.
Oh.
Now, let me just say about Greg Fasula, attorney. He's the only attorney except for Alan Love that I'd like to have as a next-door neighbor. Now, the only reason I'd like to have Alan now because he's not a practicing attorney anymore. But
He keep you on point, though.
Greg happens to be one of the better people alive. And I've got a story to tell in a few minutes about Greg and a client of mine and what attorneys can do to people. Don't you love what attorneys can do to people?
Well,
I know you got a son that's an
come
attorney.
to the defense of the attorneys. A good attorney, when you need him, is the most valuable thing you can find.
That's true.
However, what we sometimes find is that not just attorneys, but many professional people take advantage of the ignorance of other people and overcharge.
Dan, that was profound.
Was that pretty good?
It was better than good. Ignorance is not a negative word. It means I haven't learned. I just don't know. And then when an attorney or another professional finds an ignorant person, they oftentimes take advantage of it.
Uninformed person.
Well, uninformed is a nicer word than ignorant. People think ignorant means dumb.
Ignorant gets your attention.
But it does get your attention.
What is it? What is the one that Trump used with Maxine Waters?
Is that brain dead?
No, they wanted him to apologize to her. Oh, I forget what it was.
Dumb as a sack of rocks?
No, it's like low achiever or low
IQ.
I don't know. No, not low. No, it wasn't low IQ. I don't remember what it was.
My dad used to say, when in a battle of wits, make sure your opponent is armed. Which was a nice way of saying, what good does it do to argue with a fool?
Yeah.
Isn't that a fact?
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. Back in '04, Joe Martek, a financial advisor, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, started doing radio shows and objects. Their purpose was very simple. Dan had an area of expertise as an independent insurance agent. Greg Fasula has an area of expertise as an attorney. Joe Martek, financial advisor. So we figured we could answer questions for people. And we had no clue how long we would be on the radio, but we almost would have bet anybody it'd be less than 6 months.
Certainly wouldn't have been 15 years.
It wouldn't have been 15 years. And then over a period of time, when the Great Recession hit, Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, who I've known since 1980, happens to be the hardest working person alive, probably. Definitely the hardest working realtor, most credible person I've ever met. If she says she's going to call you at 3 in the morning, don't go to sleep because she'll call you at 3 in the morning. She just does what she says she's going to do, which leads me to Mike Paulus, mortgage broker. And boy, what Mike has done for people and how well he's educated people, because during the height of the recession, there was all kinds of media news about no mortgage money available, which was never true. The key thing that happened was the rules for qualifying went back to the old rules, which meant you had to prove you could make the payment. New wrinkle.
Which makes some sense.
It makes all kinds of sense because that was the rule forever. In fact, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac really didn't care about, quote, credit scores. You had to, quote, prove you had the ability to pay. Now,
but Joe, as well as I do, over the many decades, we've had a hardening of that market and a softening of that market. And then what happens when it gets too soft, that's when traditionally the taxpayers have to rush in and bail out somebody.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, well, we'll make sure this never happens again, and they tighten it, and then over time they loosen it.
So you watched the speech last night, huh?
I thought it was a great speech. I mean, there were some areas that I would have added, but, I'm not the speech writer, but I enjoyed it.
What would you have added?
Well, I would like to see a big screen behind him.
Right, with
And
mountains and lakes.
No, and then he could show Obama and all the other people who are arguing against what he now wants when they were all in favor of it. And I would say...
So he needed props.
Well, he used...
wouldn't hurt.
he used people as props.
Yeah.
He used people as props.
Yeah.
So I have
like
no
a
problem.
presentation
I would say, hey, I'm only trying to do what these other great Americans have tried to do in the past. And boom, there
they
are.
actually showed the votes and stuff, of course, in the Senate and in the House when they wanted to do walls and security, etc. Yeah, that would have been nice, wouldn't it?
Well, it's nice to show the hypocrisy of those that are saying, "Oh no, it's a terrible, immoral, unjust thing." When just a few short years ago, it was a wonderful thing.
I think
you know what's terrible and immoral? Landmines.
Landmines
would be terrible and immoral.
Don't they have those in
at the
Texas?
border? No, they don't have landmines. I think they're like out. You can't use them anymore.
Would that be like every time? Let's say I caught you as an illegal alien or whatever they want to call them now, and I implanted a device that if you crossed our border it exploded. Would that be like immoral and bad?
Yes, that would be. Yes,
that would definitely be a deterrent.
See, there are things that are, but
some countries that have no immigration problems whatsoever. Russia's one.
Yeah, you show up uninvited, you never leave. You're not alive.
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. Probably the highlight of last night to me was when the word socialism came up, and then they zoomed in on Bernie.
Yeah, he had that like I bit into a lemon face.
Yeah, the SE grin.
Yeah,
it was.
And the one from California too. I forget, Gillibrand or something like that.
Yeah.
When he was talking about the ice, she was the one who said abolish ice.
Yeah.
She looks sort of squirmy in her chair.
Well, she should.
Yes,
because,
she should.
She was using something that was just a political statement, not having enough intelligence to realize how bad that would be if it actually happened.
Oh, man. It was an interesting thing. One of Bernie's comments, I just loved it. Now I respect Bernie. I did more than lately because I think he actually believes what he says. I don't think he's as politically motivated as the rest of the group. I just think the man is just misdirected, misguided, maybe not too bright, but I think he actually believes what he says. Except he came up with a statement. He says, "What's wrong with giving the working people higher wages when companies are making money?" I said, nothing wrong with that. As long as they have a contract that allows them to take a cut in pay when the companies are not making money.
Well, in the past, that was called a pink slip.
Yeah. Unemployment. Yeah.
I can remember Nancy's dad. He worked at Pratt Whitney, and he was a great employee. He was always there, worked very hard, worked the second shift because most people didn't want to do that. He never got laid off, and they had many layoffs because they knew they could always count on Gil.
Yeah.
So what I've always told my children is when you work for someone, make sure you know everything that they don't want to learn.
Yeah.
Make yourself super invaluable to them, and you will be the last one to go. So if you want to keep your job, work hard.
It was a buddy of mine. He was an engineer type, good guy, good heart, good worker. And he was counseling his son one day, and his son was complaining about he had his job to do, but other people weren't doing their job. And he was only going to do his job. And my buddy said to him, "Well, you don't have to do anybody else's job. If I were you, I'd never do anybody else's job." And I said, "Well, then he'll never get promoted." I said, "The rule of life is if you want to move up, you have to do more than your own job."
I thought the rule was you do all the work and the other guy gets promoted.
Well, that shouldn't work.
That
only if he's the owner's son. If he's the owner's son.
But I will tell you, I have especially in sales, when you look at the guys that do the best, and then in management, when they get promoted into management and then they get promoted again. You ever heard of the Peter Principle?
Yes.
Have you not heard that?
No.
Oh, you'll like this one. The Peter Principle is a person gets promoted to his level of incompetence because you don't have a system to demote people. You only have a system to promote people.
That's how the government works.
So they move up and they move up and they move up till they can't handle the job. And they stay where they can't handle it.
They could be really great in mid-management.
Yeah.
But when they move up,
you know that
now
one,
they're
right,
terrible.
Alan?
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you get promoted to your level of incompetence.
In radio, they just walk around acting like they're the boss and get everybody else to do things.
Yeah. Here's what I always tell my children, too. I go, there are people in this world who work just hard enough not to get fired. That's as hard as they work.
Yeah.
Just
And you know
not
what?
to get
Now-
fired.
But see, now when you work for the government, though, that's okay because you're being paid well.
They're not
Your
working for the private
your-
sector.
Right.
Exactly.
It doesn't work in the private sector
The private
because
sector
of
must
competition.
make money.
You know, the bottom line
Yeah.
is, and it's one of our rules. We had 180 people on payroll, and I had a real simple rule: either you make me money or cost me money. And boy, nobody likes firing people, but I'll tell you what: when I fired some people, they were costing us money. They just weren't doing their job. So it made my stomach feel okay to say, "Hey, you've got to go."
Yeah, I have a hard time letting people go.
I know we all do, but point is, if they're not doing a job, and you can give them 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 chances, at some point you're going to say, "We had an accountant, Daniel, like this one." So things have to balance. Well, he just made them balance. It had nothing to do with it.
He's
And then
a creative accountant.
creative accountant.
What's that called? Fuzzy math?
Fuzzy
Yeah.
math. So
That-
then
that
his
fuzzy math.
his line was, "Well, if you paid me more money, I'd do a better job."
do a better job.
Oh, that was his last day on the job.
Yeah, no.
That was so funny. I thought, man, guy, you are going. I don't think you'd qualify for any job with that attitude.
Well, you wouldn't keep it long.
No, people find out that you're.
But things are changing. I have to tell you, things are really changing because these millennials are going to change stuff. Because when things are too hard, they give up.
They go to the safe
They,
closet.
I mean,
wait.
they have their ramen noodles delivered from Walmart. Now they can get their food delivered. They're okay paying
you-
extra.
I have a hard time believing that you can say any one group of people is this, because there's always an exception.
Yes, but there are so many that are like
Well,
that.
of course there's so many. But I will go back to when we were in school, and we all have buddies. They're coasters.
Yeah.
I mean, they just coast through life. And a lot of them don't cause any trouble. But like youngest boy used to say, "Get married." He said, "I can't even take care of a dog. What makes you think I can take care of a wife and
And
kids?"
that shows wisdom.
And it is wisdom. There's nothing,
Yes, but if he was really playing his cards right, he'd get married to have her take care of him.
He wasn't good enough looking.
That's-
probably not good
That's
enough
called
in bed, or both.
That's called devious.
34050. Alan, you got that problem, don't you?
No.
No.
What I thought of the speech last night, though, was I thought there was one moment that I wasn't particularly fond of, and when he talked about the investigations, I thought that
that was not a necessary one.
That could have been left out, but where he emphasized the bipartisan legislation that has been
that was going
passed
through.
recently. That, I thought, was a high mark of the speech. I thought the conclusion of the speech was another high mark, his ending. And overall, I think he did what he had to do. He basically said to the country, "This is where we are. You have a choice. You want Congress to basically pass my agenda, or you want to go socialist, and I'm going to try and do whatever I can to not have this country go socialist."
He also, here comes the $64,000 question, the wall. Pelosi and group are not going to agree to it. What's he going to do? Is he going to go out again, shut the government down again, or is he going to exercise this executive privilege?
Instead of bringing in a few thousand men to watch the border, what if he brought in 50,000 men?
Well, you saw Nancy Pelosi shake her head no when he mentioned the troops going to the
Well,
border.
she doesn't have control over that.
She
does have control over the checkbook.
Yes,
but not over the troops.
Right.
The troops are someplace. It's not that
So
we're
here
adding troops.
wouldn't this be a wonderful thing, though, if he went ahead and he accepted their budget with whatever they have for border security, because they want drones and there's things that they want, and then went ahead with the executive order and had the military build the wall anyway?
See, the executive order, I
Get
keep
it
hearing
both.
from my buds that are supposedly intelligent, it's a precedent that when the Republicans are no in, and the Democrats will use it.
Well, didn't
so
our past
what?
president whip out that pen all the time and write stuff that's now going away?
I mean,
But it'll be. Here's what I would hope.
It'll
they
be
wouldn't
hard
do.
to make the wall go away.
Well, I
though.
was going to say, I hope they don't figure out a way to just tear it down and say,
Yeah.
well, we're done.
Do you
with
know
this.
that there is a section along the border where they have pushed back, they've designated this land as, and Bill Clinton did this years ago, it's a stretch of land that is America, but the actual border barrier is like 50 or 100 miles, or I don't know.
Inland?
It's like way in,
Well,
way
that's
off the
ridiculous.
border. Well, it's so that you get 2 feet on. You're
home
okay.
free.
You're okay.
I don't understand that.
So every
If you
coyote
cross the
knows where
border
that spot
there,
is, and that's where they go.
There is no border point, no checkpoint for like miles.
Right.
So you're already way into America
right.
when you cross.
Do they have one of those big spotlights that guides the light, guides
Yeah,
them to that
probably.
point?
Guides them to that,
It's
yeah.
Neon sign that says
This
sign
way,
up
this
here.
Way, yeah.
This way.
Well, that was part of the thing. He said, well, where the wall is, they don't have an immigration problem. Well, of course not. They walk around it. I mean, come on. Well, listen, all these people trying to get into this country are not stupid. If they're not going to try to
Yeah,
climb
but
the wall.
Mexico's getting fed up with the whole situation.
Well,
It's a short-term
it's a-
irritation for them.
Well, people used to just pass through.
We
Now
deal
they're
with them
not
for
passing
decades.
through.
Now they're going to stay in Mexico.
Now they're hanging. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if the blue-collar workers were to really understand that illegal immigration, people who come over here who work for suppressed wages,
Right.
because they do, and you have employers who hire them. All right, I can remember when if an employer was caught with an illegal worker on the job, the fines were terrible.
There's like 9 chicken plants in Arkansas.
Well, they're
All their workers are,
I'm just saying,
are undocumented.
You can if the
They're not
government wanted,
enforcing the law,
you
is
just
what you're
say,
saying, yeah.
here is the fine. It's $10,000 a person, and I can guarantee you, Joe and I will sign up to be inspectors
of course.
for free.
Yeah.
Because once that word gets out that hey, it's going to cost me $40,000 to hire this guy and his family, I'm not going to hire him.
Did you see the coverage before the speech about the there's like a processing, it looks like a factory almost, it's or a hospital or something. It's in Mexico. Looks like we probably built it, but they're processing the people who are trying to come to America, and they have so many cases of swine flu and so many cases of measles and so many people are sick and they're being quarantined there. They're coming through. If they weren't stopped, they'd be coming through.
Well, I can
So
remember.
They're
Mexico is
bringing
doing
with
us
them
a favor,
things-
is what you're saying.
That's what they
Well,
say. Well,
it looks like we built it.
there used to
and
be
we
a
may
company
be paying for it.
Yeah.
called the I-9 Corporation right here in St. Lucie County on Orange Avenue. And all of the harvesting contractors contributed to this, and it was designed to make sure that all their workers were legal.
Right,
Because the
right.
fines that they were paying were
Substantial.
astronomical.
But what happened to those rules?
They're not
The
enforcing.
government backed off and said, we don't want to know.
Yeah, and that wasn't. Well, anyway, it's definitely not under.
And
Trump.
now those rules are, quote, immoral, according to
Of
Nancy
course,
Pelosi.
of course. 340-1590, 340-1590. Well, I've just got an attorney story that I've got to say, and I wish Greg was here because he's involved in the story. So I got a buddy of mine, dad dies, and leaving him a substantial amount of money. Got a trust. Now, Dan, Alan, and Joe all know that if you have stuff in a trust, it's not subject to probate, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, what's probate mean? For those of you that don't know, probate means somebody dies, and it's a way of transferring the asset to somebody else through the court system, and attorneys can charge up to, according to the book, 3% of the value of whatever those assets are. So let's say you had $1 million subject to probate, attorney can make $30,000, and it's going to take 6 months to a year if everything goes right. So, buddy of mine goes to an attorney before he talks to me, and the attorney comes up and says, okay, $30,000. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, $30,000. To do what? He says, to settle Dad's estate. And I said, you've got a trust. It's not subject to probate. You, it says right in there, are the successor trustee, and it says right in there you can do anything you want. And it says right in there you got to split up everything according to a formula. And all you have to do is do what it says. He goes, really? And I said, yeah. He says, well, Dad had a $25,000 checking account that's not in the trust. He said, so that's subject to probate. And I says, not really. If there's a will with the trust, that could be done with an administration, which would take 2 to 3 weeks and cost unbelievably high, would be $1,000, but more like $200 to $500.
Still, why would his $25,000 cost him $30,000 to process?
So I said, let me go with
He probably
you.
wants to process the whole
whole
estate.
thing.
So I said, let me go with you. because I'm not. And he says, Joe, you're not going to be mean and nasty, are you? And I said, no, but I know the questions.
Not right away.
Not immediately. Mr. Humble Joe. So I go with him, and the attorney is very, very well known in town, and he's very slick and very good. And I keep coming back. I said, probatable assets. He says, well, they got this old Lincoln. He didn't say old Lincoln. I'm saying it's an old Lincoln worth $500. He said, that's subject to probate. And I said, really? Well, I forgot that one right away, and I'm just letting it go. And he said, and then there's furniture in the house. And I said, you're kidding me. He said, oh, yeah, that's subject to probate. And there's also this asset in the trust that may not be titled properly. That might be subject to probate. And I said, you're charging $400 an hour? And he goes, yeah. And I said, you could do an administration on that checking account. The rest of that stuff, I hate to tell you, is you might say dotting the I's and crossing the T's makes it 100%, but I've never heard of anybody doing what you just said. And he says, well, I'll tell you what. He says, I'm the attorney here, and you're a financial advisor. I'm not going to talk to you about financial stuff. And he looked away from me and looked back at my client. And we went on for a while, and I'm holding my tongue. Dan, I was very impressed.
If you must say so yourself.
If I must say so myself. So my buddy finally says, wait a minute. And he goes on, and then he finally decides to calm down. And we leave. And the words we're now using were
not for the air?
Not for the air.
For the air?
Okay, yeah.
Expletive deleted, et cetera, many times. So I called Greg, and I said, Greg, I got to bring him up to you. This thing should be in administration. He goes, sure. So we go up. Well, what happened was this guy immediately filed for probate, immediately. I mean, my buddy didn't even know that he did it, but I'm sure he agreed to it because he didn't understand what was going on. He certainly wasn't educated.
He had to strike while the iron was hot.
He did this after you left?
No.
Oh, it
he
was
did
already
it before.
done. Okay.
So, and that's why I said, why did you do that? He says, well, it's the same thing, basically. And I said,
yeah,
no.
because I can.
I said, no, it's not. The administration takes 2 or 3 weeks. He goes, no, it can take longer. I said, yes, it can, but normally it takes 2 or 3 weeks. But the probate, the quickest it can go normally is 3 months, quickest, and it can go normally 6 months.
Sure.
And he goes, well, I can. It's all.
I can expedite.
He says
that.
It's all the same thing, and I said, it's not all the same thing. Well, this is where yes, it is. Attorney talking down to Joe Martek, which I understand. Listen, I talk down to me myself. Anyway, so we go see Greg. Now, Greg is the most honest attorney I've ever met in my whole life, and that's the reason we all hooked up 15 years ago, because Greg will not lie to people. He won't gouge people. He only does it right. Once he said that guy started probate, he said, look, we can fire him, but it's not in your best interest. He said, by the time we fire him and he's got to be paid and go through the process and start over again, it's going to end up costing you probably the same amount of money that this guy's doing. But what you need to do is say, stop. Don't probate anything else. Just stay with that checking account.
Now, I would want a complete accounting of everything he's done, because at $400 an hour, I sincerely doubt he's got 10 hours into what he's done. He's filed some paperwork.
That's $4,000.
I don't. It's a lot less than 30.
Yeah, and I'd be visiting the bar too.
Well, here
and riding the bar.
Well, the key is this. See, what happens is, here's my buddy, and Dad's gone, and he's got a substantial estate, and there's 3 beneficiaries, and he's got the work to do, and he's never done it. And as you know, and Alan, none of this is fun.
No.
And I said, look, you can charge your expenses, just keep track. You should meet your CPA. They got the new tax ID number. He's doing everything according to what needs to be done. And I said, you're done with me now. I'm not going to help you anymore, because now you're just going to pay bills and distribute the money and then save money for taxes. Now, here's another thing that happened, Alan, that I have never seen happen ever. And, you and I are both old guys. And Dan's looks
getting
older,
there.
but he's
I just feel old.
Yeah. So there was 2 trusts. Dad's trust, Mom's trust. Mom died 8 or 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. They never closed the trust.
Ooh.
Never. They never added or subtracted an asset. In that they've been doing a tax return every year for that trust, like Mom was still alive. Had socials. I mean, and I thought, where in the world did this come from? And this is one of the big brokerage houses. And I'm thinking, where?
That makes no sense.
Well, now what happens is those assets that should have been transferred to Dad's trust when Mom died, which would now be transferred to kids when Dad died, would have no tax consequence. There's $40,000 in taxes going to be paid. Now, Alan, who would you think is at blame for that? You're right, the brokerage house. Alan was sitting over there playing attorney, trying to think.
That's right, because what I would have done with this attorney that you saw with your client is, when you've got a rogue attorney like that, as far as I'm concerned, you've got to contact the bar.
Well, see, here comes the problem. What you do is, now it's another process that could take 6 months, a year, 2 years, right? By the time you go through arbitration and all that stuff, I mean,
No, I'm talking about
you file
penalizing the attorney.
Well, how would he get penalized? Because he'd defend his position. Now you have his side, my side. So then he would have to go hire an attorney to go after that attorney. Understand, you can do this legally, you can file that thing, but you are an attorney. This is simple for you. But us that are not attorneys, how are we going to know how to do this properly if we don't go to an attorney?
No, I'm not I'm talking about a disciplinary action
But,
with the Florida bar.
Let me ask you again. How does he know how to file that and who to go to see?
Wouldn't somebody at the bar association?
All you have to do is call the Florida bar, and they will do an investigation.
How does he know how to call the Florida bar unless somebody like you tells him?
Well, you Google it.
What I'm trying to see, all of these things are easy once you know it.
Don't you know? You ask your neighbor. Your neighbor knows everything.
No, you come to the...
Because their son-in-law's a lawyer.
You know what you do? You come to the producer at WPSL that does our shows, that's been listening now for how many years, how much she's learned everything.
You could write a book.
She knows it all.
We have a listening audience this morning.
You got to ask me about joints and
an attorney situation where you've been taken advantage of and you can show that you've been taken advantage of, then you go online, look up the phone number of the Florida bar, and contact them.
Now, which is this Lefty's bar, or which bar is this we're going to call?
It depends. If most of the people are wearing blue, that's the Lefty bar. If most of the people are wearing red,
it's the righty's
bar. Or it could be the socialist bar. So you got to be careful.
That's where they wear nothing.
Which bar?
They decorate with stars.
You know, by the way, when I was in Montana skiing, so I go to the local redneck bar, which I love the redneck bar, and they have happy hour. I had a scotch and water for $2.
Doesn't take long to get happy on that.
I'm telling you what, I couldn't believe it. And then what happens is they don't run tabs out there because the locals don't like to pay.
They
so
can't count that on.
well, you have to pay for them as you're coming along.
But
it was $2. I said, wow. You know, I've never seen a scotch for
Not in a long time.
Not a long time.
Did they make that scotch in the back room?
I hope so. Because I don't think they made much money. 340-1590, 340-1590. Where's Bulldog and Mike when we need them calling in?
Well,
they must have watched the TV last night.
You know, you mentioned skiing, your last little vacation.
Yeah.
Well, I'm praying for you, Joe, that you're able to keep the show on track until March 13th, because I will not be here until March 13th.
You're leaving. This is your last week?
This is my
You're going skiing?
No. He's cruising.
I am going on 2 cruises. A fraternity brothers of mine from Milwaukee have 1 cruise. Friends have another cruise to celebrate that I've been down in Florida for 10 years.
They're so glad he's gone.
And the beauty of it is my Wisconsin friends think so highly of me that the reason they're coming down on the cruise is to celebrate the fact that I'm out of Wisconsin for 10 years.
Well, I was just going to say, I could see it back up there. Now, let me just play Wisconsin buddies of yours. They had a bet, and they bet that you'd be dead by now, and the guy lost, and he has to pay for this cruise. Close enough. 340-1590, 340-1590. Boy, see, you ask Mike to
Yep.
call, and
All
what
you have to do is
happens?
ask.
Mike calls. Thanks, Mike. How you doing, my man?
Very well, enjoying the show. I watched the speech on C-SPAN last night, and the one thing I thought was missing, maybe I missed it, are great law enforcement. Every week one is being shot and killed or injured. It's like a war on our police, and I wanted the president to stand up and speak for our great law enforcement community loud and clear. Without them, we got nothing. We owe them everything. Our front line across every town in America.
Well, you know,
Thank
he
you
did.
to
He
the
did
law
bring that police officer who was involved.
He was shot 7 times.
In Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
I think, when they were killing all those Jewish people. And, you know, he ran in there and intervened and got shot 7 times. And he did say some very, very kind words about law enforcement during that episode.
He also, Mike, did say during the course of that thing, he used some numbers about how many people have been killed by illegals. But I think what happened is, seems to me there was a statistic, like you're saying, he could have brought up with specifically law enforcement by illegals. But I think the Dems came back and said, well, there's a lot of law enforcement that get killed by not illegals.
Yeah, but okay.
And that's true.
Yeah, I know.
But,
I know.
But that doesn't mean that the people who got killed by the illegals are any less dead.
I mean, I think, is that a defense of killing people?
It hurts a little bit more though because you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I liked it when he said, our country will never be a socialist nation. That was as close as what I'd like to have heard him be like. Really in your face against the communists.
You notice they jumped right on Bernie's face right
you
then
know,
when they shot that. You're right.
There are
right.
Democrats right now who want to change the Constitution so that our little girlfriend Pistachio Cortez can run. Pistachio.
That's right, because she's not going to be 35.
No, she's not old enough, but they want to change that so that she can run.
Listen,
Don't we have enough running already?
When it comes down to it, Clinton is going to look like the smartest, most cerebral one among the bunch of all those people, and she could wind up on top again running again.
I got no problem with that.
I will tell you what, I 100% agree with you on that one, because when they look at this pack of crazies and extreme liberals, socialists, I mean, Hillary, like you just said, Mike.
Well, they're going to be dropping out as fast as they have entered the arena, because look what happened to Elizabeth Warren yesterday.
Yeah.
With the document where she said she was American Indian.
Well, she apologized to the Cherokee Nation or
No,
whatever.
this is different. This was an application for something with college, and she put it says race American Indian.
Did she put that?
She put it. Yeah.
Well, she used that to
It
help
surfaced.
Pocahontas.
give her some extra oomph to get into certain things.
So she'll probably be dropping out.
I can't understand why so many liberal and Jewish population across America don't support Israel and turn their back on Israel. I always wonder, how has that come to be, and how do they reconcile that?
I can't figure that out either. You know, that's a tough one.
Well, Mike,
now we got a Reform Jew here, meaning, you know, Alan Love is a card-carrying, looks like a rabbi, used to teach swimming at the synagogue. I mean, he was breaststroke. Mike, that's an inside joke. One day I'll tell you about, but poor Alan is not laughing today. But the point is, Alan is a card-carrying Jew, right?
Right.
So now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Mike, the one thing I would say is I don't know many Jews that don't support Israel. But there are a lot of Jews that support the socialist policies of the Democratic Party as far as individual freedoms and as far as health care for all. But when it comes to Israel, you've got to separate the two. You've got to separate the social policy from support of Israel. I can't even think of a Jew in my life that doesn't support Israel.
The problem, like you saying, Mike, is the agenda of the party that appears to be anti. And then if you're a Democrat,
Well, how about this? We've had many presidents, who have put forth, that they were going to move our embassy. And everybody says, yes, that's the right thing to do. We're going to do it. All right. And now we have someone who actually performs. He does it. Would that not buy, to me, if I was Jewish, that would buy a lot of brownie points.
Should have got some brownie points.
But it doesn't seem to have.
No.
Well, a quick different point. I recently, which I never do, took I-95 north up to Palm Bay. And just before Palm Bay is a beautiful new interchange, and signs on the road on the side haven't been put up. St. John River Parkway. I wondered if Bulldog or Victoria, someone could let us know something about that if they know anything about it. It's a new one on me. I haven't been hearing about it. It's fine looking. I wonder where it's going to go and what it's about.
Well, you probably
going north.
It probably ends up at the St. Johns River.
Well, it runs east and west. That was evident. I mean, it's a whole new road, whole new interchange, St. John River Parkway. I wondered if Bulldog might know something about it.
Yeah, we both get off there and go to the Harley dealer.
Oh, really?
Is that?
That's where you get off and go to the Harley dealer.
Now
so it's probably where Bulldog goes.
Now you know, Mike, but if Bulldog calls in, we'll bring it up.
Okay.
Hey, Mike, I got another Mike on the radio. Thanks for calling in.
Bye-bye.
Mike Paulus is on the radio. Hey, Miguel, you there?
I'm here.
What's the good word?
Well, just wanted to say it's been a great show. I've been listening here. It seems to be a bit political.
A bit? You're kidding.
It's the day after the speech.
Yeah.
And no one's mentioned Virginia yet.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Well,
no one's mentioned Virginia yet.
That's a tough subject.
Hey,
I really thought it was a great speech. I thought it was very positive. It was poignant in some respect, but it was. I thought it was good, and there was a lot of optimism out of it.
You know what? Listen, it's an hour and 20-minute speech. I listened to the whole thing. Didn't even nod off. The guy did a good job. There's no doubt about it, and he definitely reaffirmed his commitments to America. And
that's true.
That was all very strong. Now again,
well, I do have to say that being in the mortgage industry, I really have seen the benefits of his policies. The economy is strong.
Oh yeah.
Interest rates, even though we've had some rate increases from the Fed, they're still very, very low. As a matter of fact, I mean, as we've talked about many times, our mortgage interest rates are based on the 10-year T-bill, and just over the last year, despite all the increases from the Fed, we're still looking at a 10-year T-bill yield at like 2.6%.
Yeah.
So mortgage rates have been very, very attractive.
So you're just below 5%. You're what, at 3.5 for a 15-year fixed?
Well, you know what's odd? Typically the 15-year mortgage interest rates are about at least 0.5% below the 30-year, and we have not seen that. I just have to say that it probably has to do with the way the shorter yields are trading on the T-bills.
Yeah, like some of the shorter yields. Back to the yield curve, right?
Yeah, and it's the 10-year T-bill is down to 2.6.
Yeah.
That puts the mortgage rates. I can't really say a specific note rate without mentioning an APR, because every interest rate is going to be different for every borrower out there, because it's going to depend on your qualifications.
Sure,
but
sure.
It's very possible to get a 30-year mortgage rate in the 4.5% range.
Yeah.
And just as little as 2 months ago, we were well over 5%.
Yeah,
So mortgage rates are very attractive right now.
Well, the economy's humming. We know that. There are going to be blips according from time to time, and people start panicking whenever they see a blip. But I used to call them in sales a streak. Sometimes you'd have a streak, and it had nothing to do with anything. You just have a streak once in a while called life.
Well, I can tell you that 2019 is starting off with a bang. I mean, volume is incredible, off the charts. And this comes off the heels of a dismal fourth quarter for just about every industry out there.
Well, do you remember when somebody started this rumor, and people love rumors, that the economy was going south? And then all of a sudden, all these companies come in making unbelievable profits.
Yeah.
And it just kind of ruined the negative atmosphere because, hey, proof is in the pudding. When companies are making money, which they're making money hand over fist, life it's good. It's just excellent. And
Do you think a lot of the downturn in the fourth quarter were just people taking profits off the table?
They say that, but see, I didn't see as much of that as they usually use that as an excuse. I still think there was a whole bunch of negativism out there in the media, and people were thinking. Remember that word recession in 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't listen. You don't even hear the hint of that now. They're not even saying hardly 2020 because things are humming. I mean, they're just moving right along at just a wonderful pace.
It doesn't hurt when you have such a favorable jobs report that we just had as well.
No kidding.
Well, people have decided not to participate in the recession.
That was the old hot dog cart story.
Absolutely.
You remember that story,
yes,
Mike?
I do.
No, I don't think I heard that story.
Well, this old country guy, he's making hot dogs, and life is good, and he expands his cart, and then he builds a restaurant next to it, and life is good, and things kept going. He expanded the restaurant. Then his son came home from college and goes, "Dad, don't you know there's a depression out there? Everything in the world is terrible. You're spending all this money. You're in trouble. You need to cut back." So he kept cutting back until he was back down to one cart again, and he could barely make a living.
So he chose to participate. No.
He chose to participate. All right, Miguel, you coming to 4 o'clock?
Yes, I will be there.
We'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye.
Have a great show. Bye-bye.
340-1590, 340-1590. I guess Bulldog must not be listening today. He would.
It's a beautiful day. He's probably out riding his bike.
That's
That's
true.
what I'd be doing if I had
what?
one.
We're back in Florida, guys. We're going to push
Yeah.
80 today. So
Yeah,
It's
that
a
would be a
gorgeous
great
day.
day for
yeah,
that.
absolutely. We had a little streak there of not perfect, but Chamber of Commerce weather is back. I kind of feel a lot of people get upset this time of year that live here, saying, "Look at all the Yankees, New Yorkers that are here." Me, they bring green to Florida, but I look at more in empathy is that these people spend all this money to come down here when the weather sucks. I feel sorry for them.
No.
Yes, I do. I
No.
really do. Because
No.
they
They eat it early bird and steal the sweet
wait a minute.
and low.
Aren't you from Wisconsin?
I'm from Chicago.
Close. It's
Well,
worse.
Here's the
We
thing.
lived in Wisconsin for a while.
Here's what most people object to. It is, and we don't particularly like the traffic and all the long lines.
Who does? No.
But we tolerate that because we know that many businesses rely on that. Here's what we object to. We object to being told how much better it was up north
Exactly.
and how they used to do it up north, and why don't we do that here?
Well, you know what? You're talking now about all the movie stars that said if Trump got elected, they were going to move out of the country that never left.
And we're still waiting.
We're still waiting for him to leave. 340-1590, 340-1590. Well, I got my favorite hangout is Manatee Island Pub down in Port Salerno. And I've been knowing buds of mine, and we go there. And the owner, they're open, of course, all summer. And he says basically whether he closes or opens, it's a break-even system. So he can have some people working, everybody gets paid.
Pays the overhead.
Pays the overhead, because if he closed, he'd still have a certain amount of overhead no matter what. So
And you may find a different place to go.
You betcha.
And I would ya.
I would ya.
You betcha.
Well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So
because wait a second, do the year-round residents not count?
Yeah, do we not
I
count?
mean,
Well,
hello.
that's what you just said. And back when Dan and I, back when Dan was a kid, there was tons of places closed.
Well, we had a really
off-season.
good restaurant over here in Jensen called the Admiral's Table.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
at one time,
I
it
know
was
of
like
it.
the #1 bar. It had a little
Yeah.
bar area. It had a great restaurant. And we had some friends who worked there. They would close for 1 month. Not the
Okay.
whole season, but
Yeah.
for 1 month.
Yeah.
The owners went on vacation, and we all knew to go somewhere else.
And everybody went on vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590. Well, Bulldog finally woke up. Can you believe this? He's out of bed. You're on the radio, my man.
I'm not out of bed. I've been out of bed since before you even thought about
Getting
going
up.
to bed.
I doubt it. Did you watch the speech last night?
Why?
Why?
The only reason why I did it on tape was
you
to
fell
watch
asleep.
Pelosi's expressions
I know.
behind him.
I know.
Yeah.
Chewing her lip.
Constantly.
Whatever she was reading, just made me hilarious.
I think
was like going.
the pages were blank.
But I also think she'd read one page and then she'd turn it upside down and read it again upside down.
What I thought was cute, everybody would stand up, and occasionally she'd stand up, and she'd forget to sit
She
back
said,
down.
Hello.
that was so funny. Well, it shows to go. You're getting 80. It's not kind to even
I
politicians.
thought maybe she was drinking before the speech. I don't know.
She's probably drinking during the speech.
Oh, hey, look, an Aquafina bottle can be filled with vodka very easily.
Yeah.
I had a ex buddy of mine that was he's dead now. Cocaine got him, but he quote quit and he had a bottle of neosynephrine, which was mixed with vodka and cocaine. He put it all, and like you said,
little snuff,
and he would sniff that all day long because he had allergies, right? Oh,
that
Lord.
runny nose allergies.
So I guess, did you watch the speech after you fell asleep again?
That's why he taped it. He didn't have to watch it.
Same old, same old.
Well, I thought it was a very powerful speech, though. It was well written.
You got to ask. All right, then I've got to ask you a question. Are we going to go into another shutdown again? Was it due to the economy?
Yeah. Well, the shutdown.
No, I think we ended the shutdown because of the Super Bowl.
I think that's right.
It was air traffic controllers were not going to go to work, and no one would have been able to go to the Super Bowl.
You're kidding me.
That's important stuff.
This is important stuff.
So I think it's back on again.
You know, what happens is I'm waiting for this executive order. I'm so in favor of him just pulling the plug and doing it.
Just call in the Army Corps of Engineers and say, get to work.
Yeah. I really want him to sign their budget, take whatever little bit they're going to offer him for border security, and then do the executive order too.
Do the executive order. You know, I keep hearing this Democratic or my conservative buds say, "Well, Joe, it sets precedent. When he's out, then the Democrats will do." And he should be saying, "Who cares? I'm here to do the right thing for America, and I'm going to do it now."
And I've got 6 more years to get it done.
Yeah, and he's not going to get reelected unless he keeps the gonads in line. You know, I mean,
they'll forget about precedents by the time they get out of office.
No kidding. Other than that, my man, what else is going?
Not much, except I got to go see a neurosurgeon.
Oh dear.
Your brain is lopsided again?
Well, according to one side of my head, the way it feels, oh yeah.
Well, that's not. Yeah. Well, listen, I hope they vent you well. I had a client of mine that before he died, they put a tube in his head to vent his brain, and he wasn't allowed to drink anymore. And I says, 2 drops of scotch in that tube might do the same as you drinking a pint. And he says, Joe, let's try it. I got nothing to lose.
I'll tell you a story. When
oh, that's like drinking through a straw. That'll get you so high.
Drinking through a straw.
Right.
That's high school
Directly
stuff,
to
brother.
the brain.
Well, hey.
All right, love you guys.
Good luck with the doctor, Bulldog.
Take care,
man.
Bulldog.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
340-1590. So you had a buddy that...
Oh, I had a cousin.
Cousin?
My cousin. It's my cousin Nick. So, and he's deceased, so I can talk about my cousin Nick now. So he had a trach. It's where he'd put a funnel and pour beer down whenever he wanted to drink.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Hey, you know what? There's a will, there's a way.
You know it.
Now if he'd have been a smoker, it'd been harder.
He smoked.
He
right out
put
of
it
the
on the put it on the
right
trach.
out of the trach hole.
Hey, look, I know I had a neighbor of mine that was dying and in the hospital, and they wouldn't let him smoke in the hospital, and it was called "Who cares? He's dying."
Mm-hmm.
So
it's the oxygen
son,
in the hospital that's a problem.
Turn the oxygen off, move it aside.
Put him in a wheelchair and wheel him outside.
But they did have some woman blow herself up at the hospital years ago because she got herself into the little restroom area in the room, and she was going to smoke there, I guess, with the oxygen, and poof.
Poof.
Was she old and ugly?
I have no idea. She was no more after that.
She was no more after that.
Yeah.
My mother, when she was dying of lung cancer, they opened up her lung because it was blocked, and they forgot to turn off the oxygen when they hit the laser.
Oh my!
So she had a fire in her lung, which didn't kill her. But the doctor, listen.
It should have made her rich.
Well, the doctor came in and said, "My fault. My fault."
No joke.
He looked me right in the eye and says, "It's my fault. She's in intensive care. We're hoping she'll be okay, but I'm going to tell you right now, I screwed up. I just wanted you to know." So my mom says to me afterwards, she got better before she died. I mean, she's going to die within a couple months anyway. It's really sick sounding, but that's the truth.
But still,
she had lung cancer and opted not to go through chemo and radiation. And she said, "Joe, are you going to sue?" And I said, "Mom, you're 82. One of the problems these attorneys have, they look at your value if you're not working. Old people have very low value. So maybe I could get $50,000, take me 2 years to get it, and I'll probably spend $50,000 to get the $50,000.
Yeah, just Hey, look, my dad needed to get some dentures years ago, and he was terrified of a dentist. So I took him to a large, well-known practice down south. They were going to do an overdenture where they did a root canal in each of the 4 quadrants, so there was no bone atrophy, so your mouth looked good when you. All right, so I go, we have the 4 root canals done. I go with my dad again. I'm sitting in the room basically almost holding his hand, getting him through. I'm waiting for the guy to grind down the teeth where he did the root canals to put the dentures on. I hear nothing. I hear, all done. They had pulled out all the root canals that they did. Just like with you, Joe. My dad was in his 80s.
Yeah.
We didn't sue.
No.
But they did give him his money back for the 4 root canals. So I would have asked for the money back for the surgery.
You know what? I think doctors died since then.
I would have at least said, hey, just give me the money back that you got paid on the surgery.
Yeah, you know what? I should have thought about that.
Well, I've got my own dental story.
Here we go.
About 3 years ago, they took x-rays once a year. They tell me that my wisdom teeth are showing something called resorption, where the teeth eat themselves, and when it gets to the nerve, you're in tremendous pain. So they schedule a oral surgeon for 4 weeks later, and 2 weeks later I see my primary care physician, and I tell him I'm going to have oral surgery in 2 weeks. He said, "Are you having any discomfort or any pain?" And I said, "No," and he says, "That doesn't sound right." So I send the x-rays to my dentist in Wisconsin. He says, "I don't see any resorption on your wisdom teeth."
This guy had Mercedes problems.
I wouldn't do anything. So last year when they took x-rays, they didn't say anything to me, and I said to the hygienist, "Why didn't they mention the resorption?" And she said, "Well, they wouldn't do it anyway." So this year, the head dentist looks and examines me, and he says, "Oh, probably what will happen is you'll be eating a carrot or something like that. The tooth will just fall off and it'll never even get close to the nerve. Don't worry about it."
Well, are you eating a lot of carrots?
Some.
Let's get rid of that tooth. 340-1590, 340-1590. Thanks, Mike and Bulldog. Nobody else loves us. But, hey, the bottom line is, folks, we got Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Greg Fasula, attorney, Mike Powlis, mortgage broker, Victoria Lloyd, RE/MAX of Stewart, and Joe Martek, financial advisor. We're here to help answer questions, whatever we can do to make your life better. And no question is too dumb. Let me tell you, this is a constant thing that people come up with, because if you don't know the question, it's hard to know the answer.
And since I won't be here until March 13th, I just want to tell the audience that I'm speaking from experience. I've used team members from Team Martek. They've all been wonderful, and I suggest you call the show with all your questions while I'm gone.
And say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Till next week. Bye. Okay.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.